Stepping through the front door after 9 exhausting months aboard a naval ship, I was immediately struck by the freezing air inside the house. The cold hit my face so sharply that I froze for a moment. On the kitchen counter, I found a hastily written note explaining that my mother and siblings had gone away on a luxury cruise. But when I walked into the back bedroom, I found my stepfather, Clifford, lying in bed and trembling uncontrollably. They had left him there alone, sick and suffering in the cold. The entire military salary I had worked for and sent home to cover his cancer treatment had apparently been spent on their vacation. Before I tell you how I eventually brought their entire scheme crashing down, take a moment to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and let me know in the comments where you're watching from today. Your support helps us continue sharing powerful stories about justice. My medical training from the military immediately took over. I turned the heating system back on and waited for the room to reach a safe temperature. Then I carefully cleaned Clifford with warm water, helped him into fresh clothes, and made sure he was comfortable. Afterward, I prepared a bowl of warm broth and slowly helped him eat until his exhausted body finally relaxed. Not long afterward, he fell into a deep, peaceful sleep in his own bed. Once I knew he was resting safely, the exhaustion of the past 9 months finally caught up with me. I sat quietly in the living room, thinking about everything I had endured during my deployment. For 9 straight months, I had worked long and demanding shifts aboard a naval vessel, caring for injured personnel, and doing whatever was required of me. Every dollar I earned had been sent home because my mother repeatedly told me that Clifford's medical expenses were becoming impossible to manage. I believed her. I trusted my family to use that money for his treatment. Instead, she had apparently been spending my hard-earned wages on herself. As I stared across the room, I noticed the family tablet glowing with a new notification. I picked it up and opened the message. There were several photographs posted by my younger brother, Trey. He was standing on the bright, sunlit deck of a luxury cruise ship, dressed in expensive clothes, and holding champagne beside his new girlfriend, Chloe. His caption proudly bragged about enjoying a life of luxury without having to work a single day. My stomach tightened. I immediately opened my bank application and checked the emergency fund I had spent years building. The screen loaded, and my heart sank when I saw the balance, $12. I opened the transaction history, hoping there had been some kind of mistake. There wasn't. Thousands of dollars had been spent on cruise tickets, designer stores, expensive restaurants, and casino charges. My mother and siblings had emptied nearly everything I had saved for Clifford's treatment just to finance their lavish getaway. I walked back toward Clifford's bedroom, still trying to process what I had discovered. Then I noticed something else. The glass display cabinet where he had proudly kept his military decorations was completely empty. His bronze star and purple heart were gone. Clifford noticed my expression and quietly explained that my mother had sold his military medals online for almost nothing. According to her, they were nothing more than pieces of metal and wouldn't put food on the table. I felt a wave of anger rise inside me. Those medals represented years of sacrifice, service, and courage, and she had treated them like worthless junk. Before I could say anything, Clifford suddenly began groaning in severe pain. His advanced cancer was clearly taking a terrible toll on him. I rushed toward the medicine cabinet and searched for his prescribed liquid morphine. When I found the small glass bottle, something immediately seemed wrong. I held it up toward the light and noticed that the liquid was unusually clear and thin, almost indistinguishable from water. I checked it carefully and realized it had none of the appearance I expected from his medication. My suspicion grew stronger when I examined the bottle more closely and discovered that what had been placed inside was simply tap water. My mother had apparently replaced his essential pain medication with water, supposedly to save money while she spent that money on luxury items during her cruise. The realization broke something inside me. She had allowed a seriously ill veteran to suffer simply so she could afford expensive things for herself. The sadness I had felt only moments earlier disappeared. In its place came a calm, focused determination. I wasn't going to confront them emotionally or make reckless decisions. I was going to find the truth, document everything, and make sure they faced the consequences through the proper legal channel. Just as I began thinking through my next move, Clifford suddenly reached out and grabbed my arm. His grip was much stronger than I expected. The helpless expression that had been on his face disappeared. In its place was the sharp, calculating look of the man he had once been, a former banker who knew exactly how to recognize when someone was hiding something. He ordered me to sit down, and then revealed something I never could have imagined. Clifford had secretly maintained a $3 million trust fund that was completely protected from my mother and legally separated from their marriage. He explained that for years, he had deliberately allowed everyone around him to believe he was financially struggling because he wanted to discover who genuinely cared about him and who only cared about his money. After seeing how my mother and siblings had abandoned him while stealing the money I had earned during my deployment, he had made his decision. They would receive nothing from his estate. Clifford then told me that I was the only person who had shown him genuine loyalty and compassion. He officially named me the sole beneficiary and manager of his entire fortune. I immediately began documenting everything. I took clear photographs of the freezing thermostat, the nearly empty bank account, and the bottle containing the diluted medication. Then I went next door to speak with our neighbor, Mabel. She confirmed what I already suspected and agreed to provide a recorded statement explaining that my mother had deliberately locked the house and left Clifford alone while proudly talking about her vacation. With her statement added to the photographs and financial records, the evidence against my family was overwhelming. By that afternoon, our family's attorney, Regina, arrived at the house carrying the necessary legal documents. Sitting beside Clifford's bed, she carefully prepared a new will that permanently removed my mother and siblings from his estate because of their serious neglect and mistreatment. Clifford signed every page with a steady hand. His entire fortune was now legally placed under my control, creating a financial consequence my family would never see coming when they returned home. Later that night, Clifford's breathing became increasingly difficult. While staying beside him, I decided to call my mother. I started recording the video call before she answered. The moment her camera appeared, I could hear loud party music in the background, while Trey laughed and talked with other people nearby. I told her clearly that Clifford's condition had become critical and that he might not have much time left. Instead of showing concern, she brushed off my warning. She refused to come home and told me that I should deal with the situation myself because they were busy enjoying their vacation and didn't want their celebration interrupted. Near dawn, Clifford quietly asked me for a cinnamon pastry, something he remembered loving when he was a child. I went into the kitchen and prepared one for him. He managed to take a few small bites before reaching into his belongings and placing his solid gold military ring into my hand. Looking directly at me, he told me that I was his true daughter in every way that mattered. A short time later, he closed his eyes peacefully. I stood beside his bed, straightened my posture, and gave him a final military salute as a sign of respect for the life he had lived and the service he had given. I arranged for his cremation immediately because I didn't want my mother to return and turn his death into a public performance designed to gain sympathy. Once everything was handled, I cleaned the entire house from top to bottom, removing the dirt, clutter, and traces of the neglect they had left behind. I wanted the house to feel completely different when they returned, cold, empty, and unfamiliar. Then I changed into my formal Navy uniform, carefully polishing the brass buttons and arranging the medals across my chest. On the center table, I placed the urn containing Clifford's ashes beside the bottle of diluted medication, the bank statements showing where the money had gone, and a thick legal binder containing the evidence and newly signed documents. I pulled a straight-back chair into the middle of the room and sat facing the front entrance. I didn't need to shout or threaten anyone. I simply waited. Around mid-morning, my mother and Trey finally walked through the front door, laughing and talking as if nothing had happened. Their smiles disappeared almost instantly when they saw the cold, empty room and me sitting there in full uniform. I pointed silently toward the urn and then played the recording of Clifford explaining that he had removed them from his estate and revoked their rights to his fortune. The atmosphere changed immediately. Panic spread across their faces as they realized that their lies had finally been exposed and that there was no way to rewrite what they had done. Regina then stepped forward, opened the legal binder, and began reading the official will aloud, confirming that the $3 million estate was officially divided between me and the charitable organizations Clifford had chosen. Trey dropped to his knees in disbelief, crying as Chloe immediately walked away from him, realizing that the life of luxury he had been showing off was built on lies. My mother exploded in anger, shouting that everything was unfair and demanding that I give her another chance. I calmly placed the medical evidence in front of her and told her that the authorities had already been contacted and that criminal charges related to the neglect and misuse of the medication were being pursued. Her expression changed completely when she realized this wasn't simply a family argument and there would be legal consequences for what she had done. I removed the old family necklace I had worn for years and let it fall onto the floor. For the first time, it didn't represent love or belonging to me. It represented everything I had finally decided to leave behind. I picked up my bags, walked out of the house, and climbed into my truck without turning around. I didn't need another argument, another explanation, or another apology. I had already given them more chances than they deserved. That experience taught me something I would never forget. Real family isn't defined by blood alone. It's defined by respect, sacrifice, compassion, and loyalty when life becomes difficult. Sometimes walking away from people who constantly hurt you is not an act of cruelty, it's an act of protecting your own future. As I drove away from that house and toward a new chapter of my life, I finally felt the weight lifting from my shoulders. Clifford had received the respect he deserved, the truth had finally come to light, and justice had been served.